Expand your mind and enrich your world. It's time for another outstanding podcast from ICRT.
Hello, Taiwan Talk podcast listeners. This is Keith here. Today we're going to be trying something a little bit different. Taiwan Talk is teaming up with The Morning Show with Terry Engel to bring you some extended interviews that have a little bit more of that live, on-air feel to them. This interview was broadcast the morning of Wednesday, September 23rd, and we spoke with ChinesePod, some of the first people to bring Chinese language learning into the internet age. Anyway, without further ado, this is ChinesePod on The Morning Show with Terry Engel.
ICRT, FM 100. Alabama shakes there and hold on. Silver Linings Game Plan. What was that movie, Keith? Silver Playbook?
Playbook is the movie. Silver Linings Playbook.
Thank you. From that movie. Okay, we've got our extended interviews for the week going on. Keith, what do we got going on this week? Tell us all about it.
Well, as you mentioned, we are speaking to the good folks from ChinesePod. And for those who don't know, although I have a feeling most of our listeners do, but for those who don't, ChinesePod has been providing online Chinese learning resources for about a decade now. So we're talking about thousands of podcasts with Chinese dialogue and a whole bunch of different topics. Well, the company was based in Shanghai for quite a while, but there's been a bit of a change-up, and now the hosts are in Taipei, and we're lucky enough to have them with us today. They are Fiona Tian, Gwilym James, and Constance Fong. Good morning to all of you.
Good morning. Hi, everyone.
All right, ChinesePod in the house. We've been talking just off the air. You know, I've listened to ChinesePod since the inception, back when it was John and Jenny. Now it's Fiona, Gwilym, and Constance.
Big shoes to fill.
Big shoes, John and Jenny. I tell you what, they were almost like heroes of mine. I'll tell you that.
A bit scary joining ChinesePod. I was so excited. I was like, I've been listening to you guys, and now I finally meet you, and now I've got to become you.
I was going to ask you guys that. Do you know John and Jenny?
Yeah, we've met Jenny. We unfortunately haven't met John yet, but John, if you're listening, we'd love to meet up with you sometime.
What do they look like? Because I don't know what they look like. I never bothered to look what anybody looks like online.
People are so familiar with their voices, but because they never really made much videos back then. But I guess if you YouTube John Pasden, you'll see. But
that's cheating, though. You know, that's totally cheating. When I listen to a lot of radio and a lot of podcasts right now, and I always try and imagine what the people look like. I heard your guys' voices, and I was trying to imagine. You look nothing. No. You look exactly like I thought you did.
There's no way to know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah, no, exactly.
We didn't know what you thought originally. Can you tell who's the good lookers and the bad lookers based on their voice? Do you think you can?
Well, I'm
not talking about the people here.
No, of course not. You know, the thing is, the oldest joke in radio, when Papa Paul first came here, our program director, he came in here and he says, yeah, I've listened to your show. He says, you look exactly like I thought you did, which is the biggest joke in radio because nobody ever looks like their voice. They never do. So to answer that question, if we can, let's just talk first about the move from Shanghai to Taipei. I don't know who wants to kind of field this. Feel free to just jump in whenever. But, of course, anybody who was a listener of ChinesePod knew it was in Shanghai. A lot of the stories where they talked about Shanghai. And it's now in Taipei. What's up with that?
Well, actually, ChinesePod approached us at a really exciting time. They were opening a Taipei office, kind of a Taipei branch. And it just so happened that all three of us were based in Taipei. So that was like the perfect timing. So we joined and we actually set up the Taipei office here.
You mean you were together as a unit beforehand?
Wow.
Fiona is my wife, so
Fiona's okay. A unit then is very appropriate. Okay, good. And Constance, how did you kind of get in on the mix here?
Yeah, actually, Fiona drank with my friend one night, and she wanted a Chinese teacher.
Yeah,
and I'm looking for like different kind of job to teach in Chinese, different kind of format to teach in Chinese. Right. Yeah, so my friend passed her, I think, email to me.
Yep.
Yeah, I just wrote email, and then we just connect to each other.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a very drunken teachers' night out.
Yeah, so I was like, I'm looking
you get
for
a lot of
someone.
teachers together, and they start bitching about the students in a nice way.
I'm sure a lot of things have started in that capacity. I'm sure. So where are you guys from? First of all, why don't we also get that out of the way? Because I mean, like, Gwilym. That's not a usual name, at least for English speakers.
Yeah, that's a Welsh name. So
I was going to ask if it was Welsh.
Yeah, usually I say it's like Gollum or William with a G, and they usually say William G. But no, it's Gwilliam, but only 2 syllables. And actually, I pronounce it wrong. Apparently, it's Gwilym.
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 Oh, Gwilym. Yeah, Gwilym.
I say Gwilym.
Did you hear that dude from Wales read that city? Remember we had that last week?
The weather reporter.
Yeah, the weather reporter. Yeah. Can you speak Welsh?
Not even Welsh people can speak Welsh.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough.
This isn't Welsh Pod. Maybe we should get that
yeah,
started.
Right. Keep forgetting. And Fiona, where are you from?
So I'm half Taiwanese, half Scottish. I've grown up kind of equal parts now in the UK and in Taiwan. Yeah.
Interesting. And you met Gwilym in Scotland or here?
Yeah, we actually met at university, at the University of Edinburgh. So one summer holiday turned into longer holidays.
Turned into a lifetime of...
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And now working together, of course. Yeah. So just to kind of look at the model that ChinesePod uses, back with John and Jenny, they kind of had, a Chinese-speaking lady and a
white guy.
Yeah, okay. A white dude.
Let's not dance around it too much.
A white dude that couldn't speak Chinese so well. So you had Jenny, where she was like, sort of the expert in Chinese. And then you had John that was kind of goofy, kind of spoke Chinese about the amount that you want to speak as a foreigner or probably, right about the right amount for learning or needing to learn more and explaining it.
Doesn't make us feel too bad about it.
Yeah, it doesn't make us feel bad about ourselves. But, we can also see that, wow, he's, has done something. Is that the same kind of model you guys have here? Because obviously there's something a little bit different in this model.
Not exactly. Like initially, it was actually Ken and Jenny that got together, and then John joined the team like a year or two later.
Okay, right.
But yeah,
right, I forgot about Ken. Oh, jeez, I forgot all about Ken. Yeah, you're right. Sorry.
Yeah, I basically play the part of a stupid student and asking all the questions I actually want to ask. Like John's Chinese is like one of the best foreigners out there.
Yeah.
And I'm nowhere near that. So I actually ask questions that my student friends ask.
Yeah.
And then Fiona tries to answer them with the help of Constance.
Yeah. So yeah, at the moment I kind of span in between. So when I'm doing the kind of the lower level podcast with Gwilym, I'm the Mandarin teacher helping the white guy. And then when I'm doing the upper level stuff with Constance, I become the white girl that's asking the questions.
And Constance jumps in as the expert.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so it's almost a completely different model then.
Yeah.
Very different.
Well, I mean, that was kind of a question I've always wanted to ask is, when this guy is asking these questions, is he just acting like he doesn't know, or does he in fact not know? You're saying you in fact do not know.
Yeah, well, when I teach elementary and newbie, so of some of that I just know, but I'm trying to think what was it like when I first started? Like, I didn't understand, obviously. And I still remember what it was like to be really bad at Chinese. But I think the good thing about John was he was very good, but he was able to relate to beginner levels.
But I mean, frankly, a lot of people probably don't see this because our podcasts are all edited. But beforehand, there is, sometimes some very frustrating arguments. Gwilym is like, this sentence structure is just unbelievable. I can't understand it. So we have a lot of back and forth actually between when we prep for the podcast as well. So yeah, they are a lot of them are Gwilym's questions, but we try to digest that. We try to understand what his problem is and then give it to our listeners. And
linguistically speaking,
yeah, exactly.
Of course. Yeah, no.
Has he been changed recently enough? Is he hungry? What's going on?
So Gwilym, you probably remember this as and maybe this is more specific to us, Westerners coming here. I'm sure Keith probably knows as well. What was the first phrase you ever learned in Chinese? And be careful. Remember that. Remember that we can only use.
I would like a cup of tea because I'm British, so that's pretty much the first question you're going to ask.
Okay, good.
And
very respectable.
When I first learned, I basically invented my own form of pinyin. So I literally said 我要珍珠奶茶, and I was writing it like exactly like how I was hearing it on the street. So yeah, 我要珍珠奶茶, 拜托, but I think that's wrong. It should be a 谢谢.
Yeah. Right. Or yeah, excellent stuff. Is there any of that you brought into podcast as well as a learner? Because obviously, a podcast is primarily for elementary learners and newbies? I'm guessing just because it seems...
No, it really spans the range.
Well,
actually, that's one of the things I really like about Chinese.
Well, this is what I was getting into and asking. I mean, it seems to me like it's a lot of newbie and a lot of elementary, and that there are less advanced. In fact, I don't even ever see it advanced. I see more upper intermediate or intermediate. So do you guys bring these type of experiences and realize that most of your audience is newbie or elementary?
Well, number one, like, for example, I wanted to book a dentist appointment, so I literally ask Constance to write me a lesson about that. So usually I'm thinking, what do I struggle in my daily life?
Right.
You get your own customized lessons.
And then I use that lesson, and then I phone up the dentist and book an appointment. But yeah, the good thing about ChinesePod is we do have lots of advanced lessons, and that's something that the new team really tries to do.
Right.
Because obviously Chinese is such a difficult language that many people start to drop off around intermediate, upper intermediate. Mm-hmm. But there are many people that maybe study in China or Taiwan, go back to America and just don't have any learning resources that are in the upper levels. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the best part of ChinesePod. All those people that studied a course in Mandarin go back to their home countries and can continue learning.
So what is the model, and maybe this is a question for Constance, what's the model then for the advanced classes? Are you still using Gwilym and Fiona, or you have a different way to kind of approach
I think Fiona is a very good model because her Chinese is very, very good. Mm-hmm. But for advanced students, we kind of expect them to do some formal things, academic things. So sometimes we can bring about Tang Dynasty poem and or some difficult speech, like how do you present? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Fiona becomes a very good model because she asks questions like really advanced student will ask.
Right. So Gwilym has questions that beginners would ask. Fiona has questions that advanced people would ask.
Yeah. Yeah. So I only teach from newbie to intermediate, and then at intermediate level, Fiona talks all in Chinese, so her brain gets a bit confused. She's like all English for some of the lower levels, and then all Chinese. And at intermediate, she's kind of half and half. But yeah, I drop out at intermediate.
All right. Excellent. Now, folks, we're going to take a short break right here in a moment. We'll be back, all the listeners, I'm sure, if they're listening and they want to ask any questions now, maybe the time to call in if they would like to, 8522-8282. We got to take a short break. We also got to hear from the ICRT Battle of the Bands champions in that time as well, so you guys will get to hear them as well, Icy Ball. And we'll return. We've got the host from Podcast sitting in with us here. For the hour anyway. We've got Constance, Gwilym, and we've got Fiona here. So stay with us. If you got any questions for them, feel free to post them on the Facebook as well, Terry ICRT. You can put them on there or on the ICRT Facebook page, and we'll do our best to ask them the questions. Short break here. We'll be back. We've also got the Icy Ball, as I mentioned, so stay with us.
I am the keeper of a greater magic known throughout the universe. Who can calculate the magic of radio advertising on ICRT?
ICRT FM 100, that was ICRT's Battle of the Bands 2015 champion, Icy Ball. We return now to the morning show with Terry, and we've got the ChinesePod hosts on here. We're just gonna kick this right off with a question. We got somebody on the phone here, so let's just jump to the line here. Good morning, ICRT. Who's this?
Good morning. This is Charles.
All right, Charles. Okay, now you've got a question for the hosts. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a complete newbie. I've been listening to ChinesePod for about 3 months now. Big fan of your product. I love what you guys are doing with the videos. I've been having a lot of trouble with tones, particularly the third tone. I wanted to know if you had any tips or tricks for really mastering that.
Tips or tricks for the third tone.
Hi, Charles. This is Fiona. Funny you asked that. We actually have a new video series coming out very, very soon. We haven't actually told anyone, so this is, I guess, the first time. It's called the Say It Right series, where we're going to focus specifically on tones. But if you just want a quick tip right now, this is a bit of a comedy tip, but just imagine you're speaking like Kim Kardashian. You know, everything is like really throaty. That's the third tone. Somehow that trick has been sticking with all of our students. It's like just imagine you're Kim Kardashian. So how, then you've nailed it.
Yeah, because when you first learn Mandarin, you are told that it's down, up, down, up. Yeah. But actually, in normal fluid talk, you usually don't really enunciate the up part, because if you do, it sounds like a second tone to most people.
Yeah, so that's like we see it as a huge myth, and actually it's a little bit inappropriate teaching to teach a learner what we call the emphasis pattern, where you go how. No native speaker actually speaks like that. It's actually a very low pitching flat tone. Right.
Yeah, it's just a slow fall almost, if you will. Charles, does that help you?
Yeah, that helps quite a bit. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, good. Any other questions
Big
for
like
the...
Kim Kardashian. No, that's it.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Charles. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Charles.
All right, let's continue on here. Again, we were talking over the break, so this is maybe the right next thing to kind of get into, which is just the differences, not just between Taiwan and the mainland, but just maybe in all the Chinese dialects around the world, in Singapore, anywhere where Chinese is spoken, even in America, where Chinese is taken on a second generation type of a dialect. How do you kind of deal with all of those? Do you get people, always trying to say, why don't you speak more like this or less like this, or people comment on your Taiwanese accent or anything like that?
We definitely do get a lot of feedback about accents and people's concern about different accents. And I think the key thing that we try and respond and we try and educate our learners as well is that you have to recognize that Chinese, like you said, Terry, is so widely spoken by so many people around the world. So it's just like English. English, you have a wide range of accents. So
yeah, kind of like Scottish, right?
Exactly. Scottish, Irish, Kiwi, Australian. But the key thing is that any, responsible Mandarin teacher will try to give you as a neutral an experience as possible. And that's what we really strive to do at ChinesePod.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, when I was teaching English, I thought my students found that the most interesting was the difference. Maybe like in the US, you might say pants, we say trousers. Mm-hmm. And just to find those differences really interesting rather than go, I have to learn another word. Just because there aren't actually that many different lexical differences, right? And just appreciate the differences.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, you again, just before we spoke here, gave a good example for bicycle. Yeah. Where in mainland China you used to sing and here you use jiao da ce. So which one would you use then?
Just depending on where you are. If you're in Taiwan, you hear people using jiao da ce.
No, I mean on the program,
right.
on the podcast.
So on the podcast, we try to stick with standard Mandarin as much as possible. And even that, I don't like using the term standard Mandarin.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a bit of an elusive term. You're never going to, if you as a learner, you're like, I'm going to learn standard Mandarin, I can tell you now you're never going to get there.
Yeah, right.
So just appreciate where your teacher's from, appreciate the surroundings you're in. And I think that's a key thing to remember as a learner.
It's kind of got to, I imagine, be determined a little bit just by the market as a whole. There's probably a bigger market for the kind of Mandarin spoken on the mainland. Is that what the people want mostly?
Yep. And, we're trying to be... we try to diversify our script writing team, our voice talent team. At the moment, we've got a Shanghai teacher on board as well. She's doing a lot of different script writing. So we try to give everyone a very broad experience. And the good thing about ChinesePod is we've been going for 10 years. We have thousands of lessons, that's gone previously. And hopefully every once in a while we throw in a bit of Taiwanese flair on cool festivals or different things like that. And we hope that people enjoy it because it's a different experience here to a certain extent, for sure.
Do you have topics that... you feel sometimes you're going into this topic and you're like, oh boy, I don't know if we should really talk about this. Or you get asked for a topic or anything like that?
Here's kind of where we're coming from this, because I'm sure you guys know Pimsleur. They're another language learning kind of service. Yeah. They have a bad rep because a lot of people that talk about them always talk about, why is it that all of the topics are about hotel rooms and getting girls and asking people to my hotel room? Why are all the topics about this? So, I mean, I'm sure there is a demand for dealing with the seedier parts of life, but you don't necessarily want your brand to be associated with the seedier parts of life. So how do you kind of sort that out? How do you deal with those seedier topics?
Are we quite lucky with ChinesePod users? Everyone's always asking, how do I go drinking with my Chinese business partners?
We do a lot of drinking.
We do a lot of drinking.
That maybe kind of falls into this, actually. Yeah.
So we do a lot of more adult content. So we have a lot of stuff about adultery.
Yeah, right.
Things like that. So, you don't have to go. I'm sure everyone talks about trying to, court other people. We try and kind of steer away from that, but more towards adult content for drinking, socializing, really helping you kind of improve your social skills and the phrases that you need for those situations.
But if people really want that kind of lesson, we are willing to think about making it for you.
Maybe not.
Well, what about? I think everybody's very first question when learning any new language is what are the 30 words and things like that. Have you approached that at all?
Yes, actually.
Yeah, we wrote a lesson about the gangster and the policeman.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a gangster
Definitely,
fight.
Yeah, gangster fight.
Yeah,
yes.
a police gangster off, and there was a double F, but the Chinese version of that. So we're like, yeah, so here it's
And you
used
just
as
put
a
it in there?
verb, and in the second instance, it's used as
No
a...
kidding.
Yeah.
What was the response to that? Did people freak out?
No, I mean, ChinesePod has always been an adult audience, so I mean, we're quite lucky with that. So I think they enjoyed it. I hope.
Yes. I think so.
Yeah.
Wow.
No complaints.
Yeah, interesting. I had no idea that you guys kind of got into that. What about a topic specifically about those things, about swear words or anything like that? You think that's going too far?
Do you know what? We've been thinking about that for a long time, but because ChinesePod is always dialogue based, I can't really think of a situation where
I can give you lots.
where it's just intense swearing. Maybe that needs to be done.
ChinesePod has always been kind of pushing the boundaries and trying different things, so maybe we could do a video lesson on how to swear in Mandarin.
Yeah, right.
Since I've been teaching advanced level students for almost 10 years, sometimes we read novels. There are so many like swear words,
Yeah.
words. Yeah, it's a good chance to teach them because they have to know people are cursing them. Right.
Well, exactly. You got to know when you're being called out or something like that. It's quite important.
I don't know the dirty words, so I'm sure people say stuff about me all the time, and I don't even know.
Yeah.
I mean, we've gone about it in a different way as well. You know, we had an office sitting; it was a dialogue. And if any of your listeners watch《甄嬛传》, it's like a Chinese period drama. There's the famous line "见人就是矫情." There's no English translation for that, but we fit it in, and it's an office setting. So we do try and incorporate like different. Not necessarily swear words, but inappropriate.
Inappropriate language. Yeah, right. Okay, good. That's interesting as well. We're gonna have to take another short break here. So you guys are going to stick around, and we'll be back. Again, if there's any calls or comments you want to put on the Facebook for our hosts of ChinesePod here, by all means do it. You can put it on my Facebook, Terry ICRT, or on the ICRT Facebook, simply ICRT. Oddly enough, you can go ahead and do that. Now we'll take a short break. We'll be back here with Constance, Fiona, and Gwilym.
Who are you? Who are you? We're ICRT, bridging East and West in English for more than 30 years.
All right, we return here. We've got the three hosts from ChinesePod, of course, probably, I would say, the world's most popular Chinese language or learning language podcast. Is that fair to say that?
I think it's safe to say that.
I think it's pretty safe to say. Certainly one of the first. It was certainly the only one when I was myself, again, learning Chinese and podcasts became a thing. It was the only one for sure at the time.
There is more competition now, though, and I do notice that one of the things that you guys are rolling out is more videos. You guys do a lot more videos now. So do you feel that pressure? Are there other groups nipping at your heels, kind of eating away at the whole market?
Yes and no. So Gwilym and we started a YouTube channel called Mandarin Made Easy, and video actually was our background.
You were kind of independently well known before you came to ChinesePod.
But I think there's something different about a video and in a learning experience. You see the host, you see my face, and I have way too many facial expressions for my own good.
Yeah. Paralinguistics. Constance will tell you all about that, I'm sure.
Exactly. So I think it's a much more immersive experience. So that's something we are really trying to work on, and we're hopefully maybe we can move to full video at one point. But that's something that we're working towards.
But we're also like maintaining the audio podcast, so we're exporting it as both a video and an audio, so that you can access it.
So it still remains
whatever.
a podcast, but you can watch it as a video format if you want.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, it's interesting that you still put the focus on the audio, which I mean, I love to hear that because I'm an audio guy.
Most people
got a face for radio, as they say, but.
Like when you're commuting or in the gym, you can't really watch a video.
Well, that's it. That was always the thing with ChinesePod, at least for me anyway, was the fact that I could do it while I was doing something else, and it became less of a language lesson and more of just something I was listening to, sort of by the way I might listen to any other podcast for information.
Yeah, so now that's why we do video, because we maintain the audio, like we're always thinking, would this work for an audio aspect? But also just for those students that are more visual learners, which I think is like 80% of people, just providing that extra video function is good.
Yeah, and we respect the background that ChinesePod came from. You know, it was one of the first, it was a pioneer in language learning podcasts, and we want to embrace that. We want to keep that, but just update it and give our users a bit more options.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Let's talk about the Taiwanese-ness of it now, if we can. Let's begin with asking: was it sensitive to anybody moving from Shanghai to Taiwan? Were there any listeners or any feedback at all that said, why go to Taiwan? We don't want that. We don't want that accent. Was there any of that?
Most certainly. I mean, there's always
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, there's always concern when, a hosting team changes, not just a hosting team, but location changes. And, there's not, Constance is Taiwanese. I'm half Taiwanese, so we've one of half Taiwanese, on our team. Was it a concern? But I'm hoping that in our last year as hosts that we've proven and that we're showing people that we're really, really passionate about teaching Mandarin, and that's all we care about. We want to give people the best experience possible, despite, I don't know if that's the best choice of word, me being Taiwanese.
We like to think about it like when you get a new James Bond, everyone's very against the idea of maybe like Daniel Craig or maybe Idris Elba, but you eventually love them and they become your
got rid of Daniel Craig? Did they really?
Maybe in the next one. He's going to do Spectre first.
They're getting ready for that. But but if you do look at the comment section on your website around the time where the transition was happening, there was the internet is nasty all over, but there was a little bit of that going on over there. So have you been interacting with your listeners? Are you getting to know them, and are you liking the bunch that you're getting to know?
For sure, we've
got
a
loaded question.
Yeah, exactly.
No, really.
Yeah. What are I going to say? No, we hate them all. We can't stand them.
Just alienate all of your users right now.
I mean, for those that had concerns, it was completely understandable. We hadn't proven ourselves. No one, had heard of our podcast. So it's fair enough. Fair enough. For people to have questions about us or doubt our abilities or different things. But I love ChinesePod because it's a real community. It's been going on for 10 years. There's this real passion, not just from our end, but from the user end. So I really like engaging in that energy. Although recently I've been a bit absent from the comments board, but it's because we're working on a super secret video project.
Okay, so. Good. Yeah, I went through a nightmare when I first took over the show here.
Oh, yeah, really?
I think I'm still trying to win some listeners. So for 6 years later,
but lucky for me, I've flown under the radar. I don't think anybody noticed when I showed up.
Yeah, who were you?
I don't know. Can we talk about one thing though? Do you still call your users potties? You've gotten rid of that?
I don't like the word.
I don't either. I was good.
Yeah.
And also a pod, most people don't know what a pod is anymore.
Right.
Podcasts have recently become more popular again. But it's not necessarily a podcast. It's not on iTunes. And it's more of an audio show.
Yeah, and I just associate it with the toilet. It sounds like a potty.
See, I just immediately associate it with an Apple product as soon as you say podcast, right? That's why I think a lot of people did try and move away from the idea of podcast.
I don't like naming...
Because iPod, obviously.
Yeah.
I don't like naming a clan of users a thing, like ICRTers.
Or Wu-Tang.
Oh, no. Well, then you're not going to like what I call everybody then. No, I'm kidding. All right. All right, let me just go back to the idea. Just lastly here, and we'll kind of maybe close with this. Again, kind of bringing it back to the Taiwan aspect, and maybe this is like an A, B, C part question. But do you have any listeners or any people that get involved from Taiwan here, and do they kind of comment here and then kind of roll that into, do you ever talk about the differences politically between mainland China and Taiwan? Or it's obviously very sensitive at the best of times. So maybe kind of move from the listenership here in Taiwan and how does that translate into the mainland, or does it, or do they appreciate it, or they don't want to hear about it?
Well, we definitely have a lot of poddies, Chinese pod users based in Taiwan. And there is a lot of... dialogue going on in our comments boards and stuff, but being we have a lot of users in China, and we have to respect that. And the last thing we want to see is ChinesePod being blocked. Mm-hmm. So there are definitely things that we as hosts cannot talk about in our lessons. We can't really write about, but our users kind of comment on it.
Right.
They're going to be asking those questions.
Yeah. And they do. And if you ever see a very, very diplomatic answer from me, I have, well, you know why.
We're also not aware of what you can and cannot say. The Shanghai team were very savvy on what you could talk about and what you couldn't. And we're just not sure what you shouldn't talk about.
And so you're not in the mix of things.
Yeah, right.
In Taiwan, basically we talk about any kind of topic. Because in Taiwan we almost talk about any kind of topic. So it's kind of, we lack of the filter, what we cannot talk. So basically we just talk about language usage difference.
Right.
Or focus on it.
So where does that filter come in from, and who kind of decides on that? Because you're right. Obviously, the types of things maybe that you can talk about in China and the types of things you talk about here are different. Who decides that, or do you just kind of come up with that together?
Well, like we said, so apart from politics, we talk about everything and anything, and life is not just about politics. Life is about going for drinks with your friends, going to buy different things, talking about poetry, right?
Of course.
So frankly, we feel like there is enough language that is non-politics that you can use, and we've talked about business. We've had a lot of business lessons that have a lot of, if you look at the actual story, you'll realize that it's probably talking about politics. So we try to give you language. We give you a toolbox that you can go and talk about politics if you want to.
So you need kind of a sideways way of approaching it sometimes?
Yeah, for sure.
And that was ChinesePod's Fiona Tian, Gwilym James, and Constance Fung on The Morning Show with Terry Engel. We're going to try to make these extended interviews a regular thing, so expect to see a lot more of this type of stuff on the podcast stream. We would love to hear your thoughts on it. You can leave a comment on the Facebook page or send an email directly to me, keith@icrt.com.tw. Thank you for listening for The Morning Show, Taiwan Talk, and, just podcasting in general. I'm Keith Manconi. See you next time.